Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hockey Sense. I'm your host, Joshua Kessner. I apologize for being away for a while. I have had a lot of work that has forced me to push my podcast aside for a little bit. So I apologize for that. I'm going to try and get back into doing my podcast. And so, yeah, but I apologize for that. Anyways, let's move on. So we're not gonna be talking about teams. I'm actually gonna be changing up the formula for what we're doing right now. I'm not gonna be looking at specific teams for the rest of the regular season. I could if I wanted to. However, with events unfolding as quickly as they are, I thought it would be better to analyze the overall season and the outlook of the season and that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to be doing for the rest of the regular season. And then I figured for postseason, what we'll do is we'll kind of focus on the teams, and then for playoffs, we'll do a special playoffs podcast. Anyways, so let's talk about. I have my outline here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about good teams, bubble teams, and bad teams, and then we'll go into playoff predictions. So when I say all these things, none of these, the first three, so good team, bad team, and bubble team, that refers to how, it refers to how dominant they are and how much potential they have, and if they're using their potential for strength and that sort of thing. It has a little bit to do with the playoffs, but mostly just about how much potential are they using in their team setup. So, let's start with the good team. So, good team. I have 5 teams out of each conference. I'm going to be pretty quick with these. I'm not going to rant like about each team as much as I normally like to do. So, we're going to start with the East. So, 5 teams out of each conference. So, 5 teams out of the East. We have the New York Rangers, Pittsburgh Penguins, Montreal Canadiens, Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Ottawa Senators. All of these teams, just out of every time I see them in headlines and that sort of thing, and scoring and all that, all of these teams have some sort of dominance to them, and they are utterly dominating the East, in my opinion. So, let's start off. So, we'll give a short summary as to why they're doing well. So, let's start off with the New York Rangers. Now, I know I'm biased when I say this, but I am extremely excited to see the New York Rangers basically steamrolling the NHL, and it is beautiful to see. Now, what's making them so dominant? Speed and scoring and offense. So all of that is just you throw that together, and they're scoring off the rush. They got some strength off of that, and they've got youth and talent off of that youth included. So all of this is very good for the New York Rangers, and if they keep it up, they will be a very dominant playoff team. Overall, strength for the New York Rangers comes off of speed, off of the rush, and offensive scoring potential. One weakness, I think, is defense. They're not as strong defensively as some of the other teams in the East. However, their scoring makes up for that. Next, let's talk about Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh hasn't slowed down since playoffs last year. And similar to the Rangers, speed and scoring. Only thing that Pittsburgh has a little bit more of is defense. Defensively, they're a little more solid than New York. However, that doesn't mean that they're just better than New York, because New York has beaten them already. And Pittsburgh has also beaten New York, though. But, it just goes to show that Pittsburgh is strong, but they can be beaten. And there are teams that can beat them this year. So, strong defensive play and strong offensive play on Pittsburgh. Their one weakness is their goaltending. Goaltending is not as strong as it should be compared to some of the other teams in the East. All right, moving on. Montreal Canadiens. I don't even know what to say. Montreal is just, they're dominant in the Atlantic Division right now. Again, another dominant team in the East. Defense is their number one reason they're up there. They have one of the strongest, if I would go as far as to say, they have the strongest defensive core or defense in the entire Eastern Conference right now. And it's showing. You get to see the strength out of Montreal. And not only that, they have a top goaltender in Carey Price. Now, I will say that Carey Price does have a lot to do with Montreal's wins as well. And that's just because he's an elite goaltender in the league. Some would argue the best goaltender in the league. Anyway, that's their biggest strength is goaltending and defense. Biggest weakness is scoring. Offensively, they're not as strong offensively as some of the other teams in the East, and they are also a little slower than a lot of the teams in the East. You compare them to a Tampa Bay Lightning, Pittsburgh Penguins, New York Rangers. You find teams like that, and they can outspeed the Montreal Canadiens, outrush the Montreal Canadiens. However, Montreal does have strength in defensive core, so that doesn't mean that they're going to lose because of that. But offense is not their strong suit right now. All right, moving on. Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is like New York. Only difference is they lost Steven Stamkos for a while, so they lost one of their star players. And their core has been together for a while. They have a good coach, and goaltending is a little bit of an issue, I would say. Other than that, strong team in Tampa Bay. Last but not least, in the Eastern Conference, we have the Ottawa Senators. Now, Ottawa was pretty much non-existent last year, and this year they are extremely strong, and they made some good moves in the offseason, I would say, and I think that helps with it. However, they did have a majority of their team already there anyway, and we're seeing some good strength out of the Ottawa Senators. I would say Ottawa is a pretty balanced team. Their weakness is that they're not really strong at anything. From what I've seen, they got decent defense. They have decent offense, and they have decent goaltending. However, New York has better offense. Montreal has better defense. Montreal has better goaltending as well. So they're a pretty balanced team. The Ottawa Senators are a pretty balanced team, but that doesn't mean that they're amazing at anything. However, they are still one of the more dominant teams in the league, so I have to give them credit where credit is due. Now, let's move on to the West. So, in the West, I have the Edmonton Oilers, Anaheim Ducks, San Jose Sharks, Chicago Blackhawks, and Minnesota Wild. So, for a little bit, some of these teams didn't really start off strong at all, and I think it's okay to wait for the first third to kind of talk about these teams out of the West. And so let's start off with the Edmonton Oilers. So the Edmonton Oilers have had a very strong regular season so far. They have fallen off a little bit. They're not as strong as they were at the first, 10 games of the season or whatever. Because Connor McDavid is pretty much carrying the team right now. However, they do have strong goaltending. Defense is sort of an issue in my opinion. And offensively, they're decent. They're not amazing, as I some people would consider them as a super amazing team. I don't know if I would consider them that yet, because they still have some work to do to build team chemistry and that kind of thing. Um, they are strong, don't get me wrong, but I've seen some pretty good teams out of each division beat them already. So they're not undefeatable or anything like that. Like many people, I believe, are making them out to be. However, they are strong. Connor McDavid is a good player, but he is not the best player in the entire league. All this stuff, in my opinion. He's good, but he's not the best. I would probably put like Sidney Crosby. Some of the more experienced players I'd put in the league are a little bit better than him, and that's just due to experience. So, yeah, we'll give him credit where credit is due. He's a good player, and Edmonton is a strong team, but their biggest weakness is defense. Anaheim Ducks. Now, Anaheim is one of those teams that, again, I'm biased. I'm an Anaheim Ducks fan as well as a New York Rangers fan. Um, but let's talk about Anaheim. So Anaheim was one of those teams that did not play very well in the regular season. The first couple games they were kind of lacking. Now they're starting to pick up a little bit more. Slowly starting to pick up a little bit more. They're now in right now they would have a playoff berth if the playoffs started right now, and they're doing pretty well. Their biggest weakness, I would actually say, is scoring. Defensively, they're pretty strong when they play their game properly, and goaltending is actually both Jonathan Bernier and John Gibson are both very strong goaltenders. Now, I know some people would say, well, Jonathan Bernier's not that strong. Well, I've seen otherwise. I've seen him as a pretty strong pretty strong goaltender, and I actually think that the reason he played bad was because he was in Toronto, because Toronto's defense is not as strong as it can be. Anyway, Anaheim Ducks, pretty strong as of now. San Jose Sharks, similar to the Anaheim Ducks, only difference is that they can score. So that's why they're really dominant. Chicago Blackhawks, biggest weakness, defense and goaltending. Corey Crawford is off and on. He's not. I've never considered him a consistent goaltender anyway, but he is off and on, and I would never consider him as an elite goaltender in the league anyway. He's a strong goaltender, but I would never consider him an elite goaltender. And I think that's actually one of their biggest weaknesses. However, their defensive core is a little bit better than what many make it out to be. I think Chicago's defense is pretty strong. However, they're not as strong this year as they used to be, and I think the thing keeping them up in games right now is actually offense. Offensive pressure is what's helping them win games. That's their biggest strong suit, and actually, they're not as speedy as they used to be. They're a little bit on the average side right now. So, in terms of speed and size, so they're pretty balanced team, but still strong. So, Chicago doing well. I don't really like Chicago, but they're doing well. You gotta give credit where credit is due. Minnesota Wild. This was interesting. I have to give Minnesota credit for staying strong because of a change of coach to Bruce Boudreau, who has a different playing style than Mike Yeo had. And overall, Minnesota has played really strong, keeping up in that Central Division with some of the big boys, Chicago and St. Louis specifically. So I have to give credit where credit is due. Overall, strong play by the Minnesota Wild. Good games overall. And a strong team so far. Alright. So I'm going to make these a little quicker than normal. let's talk about bubble teams. All right. So, bubble teams. We have 3 bubble teams in each conference. In the East, I have Toronto Maple Leafs, Philadelphia Flyers, New Jersey Devils. West, LA Kings, Winnipeg Jets, Nashville Predators. So let's start with the East. So Toronto Maple Leafs. Strong potential. They have very strong potential. Good goaltending. Defense is a little lacking, but offense is strong, but could be better. If they manage to get defense down a little bit more and get strength, more consistent strength in offensive pressure, they will be a dominant team, one of the more dominant teams in the East. And I can see them figuring that out this year. Will that happen? I have no idea. But overall, strong play can be achieved by the Toronto Maple Leafs. Moving on, let's talk about the Philadelphia Flyers. Philadelphia Flyers are a bubble team. They have strength in offense. Defensively, they're a little lacking, and goaltending is a problem. Now, I will give Philadelphia this. Philadelphia does have some injuries that have hampered their ability to do well. But with some of those people coming back, I believe that Philadelphia can be a wild card position if they really try for this season. Goaltending is a little bit of an issue, but if they play strong defensively, they can be a strong team in the East. New Jersey Devils. New Jersey knows how to score. That's about it. I just think their defense is really lacking. And they have a great goaltender in Corey Schneider. I'm always seeing them, trying to score interesting goals, that kind of thing. But the thing is, they get outplayed every time I see them. So, New Jersey can be a better team. Right now, they're a wild card, but they can be a better team. All right, let's move on to the West. So the West, we have the LA Kings, Winnipeg Jets, Nashville Predators. LA, again, Jonathan Quick out. Once Jonathan Quick comes back, it'll be interesting to see if he's still strong. But they can be strong without Jonathan Quick, in my opinion. But they have potential to be better. But we'll see if that actually comes into play. Winnipeg Jets, they're almost there. They got the offense they need. Now they just need the defense. But they do need offensive consistency. But they do have a strong team. They just have to reach their potential. Nashville Predators, honestly, the loss of Shea Weber is hurting them. But they have to figure out a way to get around it. I think they can do better. I consider them as I would consider them a wild card team as of now. If they play their cards right, they can be a strong wild card team, in my opinion. But they can reach that potential and hold that potential. All right. Let's move on to the bad teams. These teams are teams who are just overall just bad. Sounds like how it is. They're just bad right now. 3 bad teams in each conference as of now. All right, let's start with the East. Detroit, not in a playoff position, and youth is hurting them, and or getting rid of some of their experiences hurting them, and also overall just the rebuild phase is really just overall hurting them, which they need to do. It's been coming for a long time. They had to get rid of some of their older players, so it's hurting them, but they're overall just not playing very well right now. New York Islanders, not a team I expected to just drop so far in the standings. I expected them to be maybe below a wild card, but they got rid of some pretty important players to their team, and it's hurt them drastically. I don't know what they were thinking getting rid of some of their players, and it's just terrible for them. Just overall terrible. The New York Islanders really aren't a threat. Overall, bad play by the New York Islanders. Florida Panthers. Just recently they fired their head coach. Yeah, their play has been mediocre at best. They were strong last year, and I actually had them as a dark horse team last year going through the playoffs. But this year they can still pull it out and get into the playoffs, but they're not going to be able to play against some of the teams, some of the really strong teams this year in the East. And overall, just bad play by the Florida Panthers. All right, in the West, we have the Vancouver Canucks, Calgary Flames, and Colorado Avalanche. So, Vancouver, star power, but again, no production. Just bad play. I've seen Vancouver do better. Overall, just bad play by the Vancouver Canucks. Calgary Flames, youth is hurting them. Inexperience is hurting them. And again, bad play by the Calgary Flames. Colorado Avalanche. I don't know what to say about Colorado. Age is hurting them, I think. But overall, I've seen them do better. Usually they're a wild card team. Poor play by the Colorado Avalanche. That's all I got to say for this one. All right, so let's talk about playoff prediction. This is my last thing, playoff prediction. So playoff prediction is based on the current status of teams that have a good chance of making the playoffs if they maintain how they're playing right now. And some of them, some might be deep run teams and some may not. I picked 3 from each conference, and I'll tell you if they're deep run teams or not. So let's start with the East. New York Rangers, Montreal Canadiens, and Pittsburgh Penguins. As I described earlier, New York Rangers and Pittsburgh Penguins. Speed, strong scoring, good goaltending for the New York Rangers. A little less good goaltending for Pittsburgh, but still strong. And Pittsburgh has better defense than New York. Montreal, strong defense and good goaltending. All of these teams I can see being deep run teams. Obviously, there are other teams in the East that can make the playoffs. These are just my top 3 based on current status. In the West, again, I'm going to go with all of these being deep run teams. One of them I think is controversial, but I still stick to my guns on this, and I've said this to my friends before the season started. So my top 3 teams are Anaheim Ducks, Chicago Blackhawks, and San Jose. Chicago Blackhawks and San Jose, I think, are not controversial. They're very strong teams, and they know how to, if they get to the playoffs, they're going to be strong. The one I think is controversial is Anaheim. Based on their play right now, they're kind of iffy. However, I think they can get there with some of the strongest defensive core in the league, and their strength in offense will come. And they have some very strong players and good goaltending. I think Anaheim can be a threat to win that Stanley Cup this year. All 3 of these, again, are deep run teams, in my personal opinion, based on play right now. So, overall, let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think that this list is good? Do you guys think there are other teams I should have talked about? Leave those in comments. Like, subscribe, follow. If you're listening to this on SoundCloud, I think it's favorite and follow. If you're listening to this on YouTube, like, favorite, and subscribe. Thank you for listening, and I plan on doing another one of these this upcoming weekend, and maybe we'll focus a little bit more on specific teams. Overall, thanks for listening, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one.